Yo, what is good, YouTube? Welcome back to another JC2K video. Today I am going to be going over my NBA starting small forwards tier list. I've done the shooting guards tier list and the point guards tier list to this point, and now I'm doing the small forwards tier list. So if you enjoyed this video, please make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're about 150 subscribers away from 1,000 right now, trying to push to get to that in the next month or two. So I'd really appreciate the support. And if you have not, make sure you hit that subscribe button. So let's hop into it. Not every single player on this list is perfect. Like, not every player has been starting this season. Not every single player. There's like a couple players on here who jump out at me. It's not really playing the small forward position very much, which always throws me off. That being said, this is the best list that I could personally find, and yeah, let's hop right into it. So starting off with Jimmy Butler. He's an A tier small forward, borderline S tier. The way he played at the end of last year, I'm definitely tempted to put him in S tier. That being said, I don't know. I look at this list, there's a couple guys that I think you could definitively say are over him. That being said, I am considering putting him in S tier at some point. He's an elite defender. He's become a better offensive player over time. We saw how good of an offensive player he had become as the season developed, as the playoffs happened last year. And since he's gotten back to the Heat, they've become a much better team again. So he has a very positive impact on the team that he plays for. When he plays, they do better. It's just it seems to be a consistent impact. Terence Ross, I'm putting him D tier because he's not that great of a defender. He definitely is a spark plug on offense. He has certain games where he's absolutely phenomenal, and then he'll have certain games where he's not. Kind of inconsistent. He comes off the bench for the Magic most of the time. That being said, I do believe he's a solid player. I just don't think he does enough on the court, with the exception of score the ball sometimes at a very high rate. For me personally, to put him higher than D tier. Bertons, same thing, D tier. Knockdown shooter. He's really found his shooting stroke again as of late. Toward the beginning of the year, he couldn't hit his shot, which is not a good thing for him. He doesn't play much defense, though. He doesn't really do much for you besides shooting. He's more of a power forward, but he doesn't rebound a ton. Not a great passer. He doesn't really give you a ton besides the ability to shoot about 40% from the three-point line on high volume. But yeah, I think that's probably where both of them deserve to be put. Josh Richardson, he's like a C tier. I consider putting him B tier, but he's just not efficient enough for me. The thing about Josh Richardson is he shoots the three-pointer like he's a 37 or 38% three-point shooter, and he's like a 33% point shooter, 32%. And he'll be shooting 1 for 5, 1 for 6, just keep jacking. And I know Dion Waiters says it's better to go 1 for 30 than 1 for 8, or maybe it's 0 for 30, 0 for 8. But as a fan of a basketball team, especially when you're not hitting shots, I don't want you to put him up. And Josh Richardson seems like one of those guys who, for me personally, as a Mavericks fan, just frustrates me more often than it makes a positive impact. I feel like he is a solid defender, I'll give him that, and he plays hard. He just needs to become more efficient or have better shot selection is the thing for me. So that's personally where I put Josh Richardson. Eric Gordon, when he's healthy and playing well, he's like a B tier guy, but the issue with him for the last couple of years has been health for one, and his efficiency. He used to be a more efficient player, I feel like, several years back. He's not like super inefficient now, but this year's efficiency hasn't been great. He still averages something along the lines like 18 points a game when he's healthy, which is really actually not bad at all. And I think he's a guy who could make a very positive impact off the bench for a championship contender. But in Houston at this point, he's low-key wasting points of his career at this point because they're just tanking hard, trying to get Cade Cunningham. They've lost like 15 or 16 point games in a row. He's out for the next like 6 weeks. I think at this point he deserves to be in C tier. We'll see if he winds up getting traded or anything like that, and if he can potentially become more efficient on a contender. But we'll have to wait and see what happens. Kyle Anderson's another C tier guy. He's actually had a solid year. Kyle Anderson's one of those guys who I always thought had a decent bit of potential. Slow-mo. He has that relatively unique play style where he just doesn't play at your typical. I think it'd be fair to say your typical NBA speed, but he makes it work for him. He's efficient. He's a really solid defender, which you really wouldn't think with below average athleticism. But that being said, he is a very, very solid defender. And he's become efficient on the offensive end. He shoots the three pretty well on relatively good volume from what I've seen. And great defensive player, scores the ball at a decent rate. I'm tempted to put him B tier for this year. I'll leave him where he is for now, but he's had a really solid year, and I think he's a really solid player as well. Brandon Ingram is A tier. The Pelicans are one of those teams that just really confuse me. I think they confuse a lot of other people as well. There are nights where they'll play like a championship contender, and then there are nights where they'll just play like they're trying to get the number 1 pick. And they have a lot of talent in their roster. I don't think the talent has ever been a problem for the Pelicans. But Brandon Ingram, again, he's several years in a row now. He's averaged, 20-plus points per game, shooting relatively, pretty good from the field. His efficiency is not bad at all. He's a decent passer and rebounder. He plays solid but not great defense. Defense for him is often an effort thing, but I would like to see him perform more when it matters and get the Pelicans to the playoffs as their probably leading scorer, leading best player. I mean, him and Zion kind of share that role as best player, leading proponents of the offense, but they do have a lot of talent, so I want to see them make use of it and be more consistently efficient and effective. Yeah, that's my take on the Pelicans and Brandon Ingram as of right now. Demar Derozan. Oops, you're not B tier. Or C tier. Is Demar Derozan A tier still? You know what? I think Demar Derozan still is A tier. I think there's just kind of a gap between these guys so far that I've seen. Pretty big gaps. I don't really want to put any of them in B tier. But DeMar DeRozan has had a really, really solid. I'd just say he's had a really solid career. With the Spurs at this point, they're not really contenders anymore, but he's still putting up good numbers, playing hard, putting up all-star level numbers. I believe personally he deserved Mike Conley's all-star spot. No disrespect to Mike Conley. I'm glad he became an all-star. That being said, DeMar has had a really good year. He's shooting the 3-ball more this year than he has in previous years. Not at a crazy high level, but DeMar does exactly what he does on a consistent level. He's become a better passer. He knocks down his mid-range shots, finishes at the rim. Great athlete. He's become a much better passer and runs offense better in his later years. And I think DeMar Derozan is still a very, very good player, and I'd be interested to see if he winds up staying in San Antonio these last few years, or if he gets another opportunity to truly compete for a championship. Chris Middleton is yet another A-tier player. I really think there's a lot of good small forwards in this league. Looking at this list, there's a couple more that I see that probably are A-tier players as well. Middleton is like a borderline S-tier guy when he's playing really, really at a really, really high level. He can be a primary scoring option in the NBA, especially when Giannis isn't playing well. He shoots insanely efficient, from the 3-point line. I think he shoots 42%. He's a pretty good passer and rebounder again. And a very, very good above-average defender. Good size, plays good defense. He and Giannis are a very dangerous combo, and the Bucks are a very, very dangerous team, as they've shown by being so consistently good in the regular season. At some point, we're going to have to see it from them in the playoffs to push them to the next level. But again, Chris Middleton's a very, very good all-around player. I like him a lot. I think he is honestly a bit underrated by most people in the 2K and NBA community in general. Michael Porter Jr., I think he's our first B-tier guy. Michael Porter Jr. is maybe the most important player on the Denver Nuggets. That might sound a bit extreme, but I really truly believe that when he is playing well, shooting efficiently, scoring the ball at a high level, he can make a massive impact on that team. He rebounds the ball well. He's got great size, great athleticism, really, really good shooter, especially for his size and his ability. There's a reason people compared him to KD coming out of college or coming out of high school. And I'm glad to see that the back injury has not derailed his career entirely. He's played more and more minutes over the last couple of years, and at this point in his career, he's playing a much, much bigger role. Probably the third best player on the Nuggets, third scoring option, and I would say personally maybe their most important player, because when he plays at a high level, he makes them a much harder team to beat. Moving on, we got Luguentz Dort. I'm tempted to put him in B2 just because of how elite his defense is. And he's become a better scorer this year, but he plays for the Thunder, and the Thunder are just, they overachieve, I'll give them that. But they're not a threat at this point. But they definitely do compete, they overachieve. And Luguentz Dort has become a better scorer. He's one of the best defensive players in the league. He doesn't really give you much else on offense besides scoring, but he does knock down the 3-pointer at a pretty high rate. Well, no, I wouldn't say a pretty high rate. He's not a great three-point shooter, but he's improved as a three-point shooter on higher volume, and I'm hoping that he'll become a consistently better three-point shooter because he does shoot it a lot, and he's gotten better up to like 34%, I feel like, this year. But his defense is exceptional, and I'm going to leave him in B tier for now, but just because I believe overall he's an amazing glue guy, plays super hard, can score the basketball a bit. I like him a lot. I think he's a good player. Bojan Bogdanovic. I didn't know where Bojan Bogdanovic really goes right now. The Jazz have had an amazing year. Bogdanovic has been a valuable part of that, as he has been for the last 2 years to their success. He's always been a good three-point shooter. He doesn't shoot a ton of shots that aren't three-pointers at this point in his career. He's not really out here creating a ton of offense for himself, but he scores the ball at a high level. He's not a bad defender at all, and I think because of how good the Jazz have been, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and put him in that B tier. And yeah, I think he's a really solid overall player. I think he's one of those guys who's a very, very valuable role player. And teams need guys like him to hit open shots, occasionally make a play for themselves, play solid defense, and just make a positive impact every time they're on the court. And I think that's something that Bojan Bogdanovic can do. That's not Bojan Bogdanovic, sorry, can do. Jaylen Brown is another A-tier guy. He was an all-star, first-time All-Star this year, I think deservedly so. He was a first-time All-Star, right? Not second time. I'm pretty sure it was first time. And I personally like Jaylen Brown a lot. I think he's become a really, really good offensive player, which was the big knock on him, and he wasn't when he was younger. He's become a much more efficient three-point shooter. Even on high volume, he shoots very efficiently from the field as well. He scored the ball at a really high level this year. There are games relatively consistently, especially recently, where he looks more important to the Celtics than Jason Tatum and like a better player overall at times. Definitely more consistent on the offensive end than Tatum is, in my opinion, and I like him a lot. I think he's a very, very, very important piece to the Celtics, and if they're going to have prolonged postseason success, it's going to require Jaylen Brown to play like a superstar, and he has shown flashes of being able to do just that on both the offensive and defensive end. KD, S tier. I think he and two other people on this list are so obviously S tier, it's not even a debate. When KD's healthy, he's like one of the best scorers in the league. He'll put up 30 a night consistently. Everybody knows it. You're not really stopping KD. He's one of the most unstoppable players in the league. He is a good passer, good rebounder, solid defender still. We thought he wasn't going to be the same. Yeah, about that. KD is the same player that he was. And I think he's shooting like a ridiculous percentage as well. He's shooting over 50% from the field, which he's done like every single year, which is stupid. Shooting like 40-some, 42, 43% from three, which is just ridiculous. Solid defender still. KD has shown that an Achilles injury in the 2020s is not a career ender the way it used to be, and I'm very, very impressed overall with how good KD is at this point. Matisse. I think C tier. I think like he had a couple games recently. He had one game in particular recently that I remember that he had like 5 steals. I know he's one of the best defensive guys in the league. The issue with Matisse is he doesn't really provide much on the offensive end. He shoots poorly from 3 on low volume, and he doesn't score at all. He very rarely takes any sort of shots at all. He doesn't rebound much. He doesn't pass. He's really just a elite defensive stopper with almost no offense, and I feel like a guy like that can't really be higher than C tier, even with how exceptional his defense is. He's going to have to develop into an offensive player at some point to become a truly, really good NBA player, I think. His defense is incredibly valuable. That being said, he's going to have to get to the point at some point in his career, he averages 10 to 12 points a game to be a consistent starter, above average player, I feel like, and he's just not to that point yet. And he has also not started very many games, so I'm not entirely sure why he's on this list. That being said, I think C tier is probably right for him because of how good he is as a defender. OG Anunoby is another really good defensive player. I like OG a lot. OG had a couple years where, I think last year specifically, where he kind of struggled. Was it last year? I don't know. I feel like there was one year that he really struggled. Maybe it was 2 years ago. But he's become a good 3-point shooter. He's not really a. I don't know, man. OG, I feel like this year has been more of a B tier guy. I think he's averaging closer to 15 points a game. The Raptors are playing better as of late. He's had some, I think, injury and potentially COVID issues so far. Especially with the Raptors COVID issues. I think he was involved in that. But that being said, I think he's become a good enough offensive player for me to put him in the B tier, especially given what he gives you on the defensive end of the court. So for that reason, I'm going to put him in the B tier. Otto Porter, we'll go C tier. I like Otto Porter again. I think he's had points in his career where you're like, wow, this guy can really score the basketball. But then he has points in his career where he's like, he's a mediocre level player. And I think we're at that point in his career where he's a mediocre level guy. He can score a little bit. He can rebound a little bit. Doesn't do a ton for you as a playmaker. Shoots a lot of threes at a meh level. He's not like a great elite 3-point shooter, but he's an above average 3-point shooter. He had a couple of years where he was like an elite 3-point shooter, but the last couple of years he's been a relatively average, probably above average 3-point shooter on not crazy volume. He's not a great defender, doesn't really put up exceptional stats. Plays on a bad team. I don't know if Otto Porter deserves to be any higher than C tier at this point in his career. Isaac Acoro, at this point, I'm sorry. I love you. I think you have a lot of potential in the NBA. He's actually a really solid defensive player, but he does not do much on the offensive end, and he's very inefficient in I wouldn't say super high volume, but like he hasn't done much to this point in his career as a offensive player, and he hasn't been an elite defender to this point. I think he's got really good potential, but he's just going to have to prove it and do more for me at some point to be really, I think, considered much higher than this. And he doesn't play a ton at this point as well. Plus, he plays in the Cavs, and they're not that great. So, low efficiency, not elite defense yet. I say that I think he's a relatively solid defender even in the NBA. I know he was really good in college. Maybe I'm underrating Isaac Acoro a bit. I'll say that. It's very possible because, I mean, y'all know me. I'm not perfect I don't watch every single Cavs game or anything like that. But he doesn't shoot the three well at this point, and he's very inefficient. So I'm going to have to see more out of him at some point to move him up. Jeremy Grant's an A-tier guy. That might seem a little bit high. Jeremy Grant would not have been an A-tier guy until this year, but he's really the only bright spot on the Pistons. He has averaged something like 23 or 24 points a game this year. I feel like, is it that many? It feels like it's been that much. And he's always an above average defender. Like, I really think it's really cool to have seen him emerge from this opportunity after playing such a role player role in Oklahoma City and Denver, and all of a sudden he's become a great scorer, still maintaining relatively good efficiency even as a shooter. I don't know. I think, and he's an above average defender. Like, Jeremy Grant's a really solid player, borderline all-star caliber year this year. If the Pistons were better, I think he'd be an all-star. I think he has the potential to be an all-star in the future because he's played at a really, really high level, which I don't really think a lot of people saw coming. TJ Warren has been injured for almost all of this season. At least it's been a while. I'm not sure how many games he's missed this year. Has he played this year? Like, I'm not sure, entirely sure if he's played this year. He's only played a couple of games, I feel like. But going off of what we saw last year specifically, and last couple of years, he's been like a 20-point per game scorer on relatively good efficiency, above average-ish defense. He played incredibly in the bubble. I like TJ Warren a lot. I think he's a really good player. And I think he deserves a spot in B tier. He's one of the better players in B tier. Kelly Oubre Jr., another B tier guy. He had a horrible start to the season, but overall he is a good 3-point shooter, good defender, nice, really good athlete, great hair, very attractive male specimen. Good player. The Warriors are very meh without Clay, and they're just not a great team at this point with the roster that they currently have constructed, but they're not a bad team at all. Yeah. Kawhi and LeBron. We'll just put them both in S tier. Put them together. I mean, I don't really think I have to go over them in all honesty that much. Kawhi is the best defensive small forward in the league, probably. Arguably the best defensive perimeter player in the league. LeBron is the best player in the league, the best player of all time, in my personal opinion. I love LeBron. I think a lot of people think LeBron's one of those polarizing guys because of the trolls on Twitter and stuff. But I don't think anybody will debate that Kawhi and LeBron are S tier level small forwards, two of the three best small forwards in the league. Mikhail Bridges, is he B or C? I'm gonna put him in B tier, I think. That being said, the reason that I think I put him in B tier is that he is an elite defender. His perimeter defense, he's the best perimeter defender on the Suns, I would say. And the Suns have had a good year. He's also become a pretty dang good three-point shooter. Super efficient. Not at super high volume. That being said, he's very efficient, both on the three-point line and inside the three-point line. He plays with Chris Paul, which helps a lot on that type of thing. That being said, I like him a lot. I think he's a really, really good player. I think he definitely deserves his spot in B tier. I'm going to move Dort down. I think Dort's a C tier guy. As much as I like Dort, he's just not efficient enough on offense at this point to put him in the B tier. I feel like he stands out a bit among these other names that are in B tier. Harrison Barnes. Is Harrison Barnes B tier? I feel like Harrison Barnes, I'll admit, I haven't watched a ton of Kings games, but he's had a good year, hasn't he? That's what I've been told. Because I've watched two Kings games this year, but I've heard he's been having a pretty good year. I know he's always been efficient. When he was on the Mavs, he was a decent player. He never played he was never exceptional for us, never exceptionally efficient either. But I don't know. I never had any problems with him. He can score the ball at a decent level. He's one of those mid-teens scorers on relatively good efficiency, average defense. Pretty good player. Solid third or fourth option on your team, especially if you want to be a really competitive team. He'd be a great fourth option. Was a really effective role player for the Warriors. Bogdanovic, I'm putting him in D tier. I would love to put him higher, but he has played horribly this year in the limited minutes that he's played, and he's struggled with injuries as well. He's only played I'd say 10 or 15 games this year. But in the past, he's been a solid role player, relatively efficient, knock down threes. This year, it's just been a mess for him so far. I'd like to see him recover that past performance that he's had, and I hope he's able to do that at some point. Gordon Hayward is a B tier guy, not B tier, an A tier guy at this point. I didn't think he would be quite as effective and efficient and all that as good as he has been with the Hornets. I'm happy to see him thriving and playing well. The Hornets are a very fun team to watch, who I see having a very threatening, good future, which is something you really couldn't have said about them a couple years ago. And this contract, as bad as we thought it was in free agency, really does not look like that bad of a contract, because Gordon Hayward's been playing at a borderline all-star level at times. Him and LaMelo and Terry Rozier and PJ Washington, and they have and Malik Monk and guys like that. They have a very bright future in Charlotte, a young future, fun to watch future, and I'm excited to see how his career progresses over the next couple of years. Anthony Edwards, I'm putting him in D tier still. I would love to put him in B tier, not in B tier, in C tier, but Anthony Edwards at this point, he just doesn't shoot the three-pointer well, and he's not efficient at all. He's playing a lot of minutes, I'll say that. And the Timberwolves are an atrocious team, so he's going to have to figure it out at some point, but he just shoots too poorly at this point for me. He's played better as of late. I think he's definitely going to wind up being a very good NBA player. I just don't think he's there yet. He has to develop on the offensive end and on the defensive end to a certain extent as well. He shows ridiculous athleticism. I mean, he's thrown down some of the best posters this year. And that one dunk against the Raptors was one of the greatest dunks I've ever seen in my life in game. He is a freak athlete. And he does seem to be developing a three-point shot. I feel like I might be underrating him a little bit, putting him in D tier. I think he's probably the best player in D tier. I don't know. I'm waiting for him to show me more in terms of consistency and efficiency, or more on the defensive end. Obi Toppin is, I did not think that the Knicks should take Obi Toppin. I knew they were probably going to, but they didn't need another power forward. I don't know why he's on the small forward list, really. But he doesn't play much. He doesn't shoot the three all too well. He doesn't really do much at this point in his career. He's an atrocious defender. His footwork is horrible. Amazing athlete. Shows potential to be a good three-point shooter. But isn't he already like 25 as well? 24. He's old for a rookie. And I think he has time to develop. Of course, I think he will develop into a solid NBA player, a good role player. At least on the offensive end of the court. But he's just not there yet. We're gonna have to see more out of him, I feel like, before I can really put him any higher than he is right now. Derrick Jones Jr. is the final guy on this list. Obviously, everybody knows Derrick Jones Jr. is an exceptional athlete. He's fun to watch, but he's never been a good three-point shooter. He doesn't play a ton of minutes. Although he plays a decent amount of minutes, but he doesn't play an exceptional amount of minutes. And he doesn't score the ball at a super high level. He's a above average defender for sure. I'll give him that. One of the best perimeter defenders on the Trailblazers. And for that reason, I'm going to put him in D tier and not in F tier because of his defense. But I'm going to want to see more out of him overall as an offensive player over the next couple of years if he wants to maintain his spot as a starter in the league, which we'll see if that happens or not over the next couple of years. But for that being said, this is going to be the video. This is the tier list that I put together for small forwards. Who do y'all think I rated too high? Who do y'all think I rated too low? If you enjoyed this video, please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, and I'll be back with another 2K video very, very soon. I appreciate y'all. Peace.